Cole woke up choking on sand. The burning grains filled his mouth and nose, and he coughed violently as he pushed himself up from the ground. His head pounded with terrible pain, and dried blood covered the left side of his face. The sun above him was not yellow like Earth's sun, but a deep, angry orange that made the desert shimmer with heat. He remembered the transport ship. He remembered the alarms screaming as missiles tore through the hull. He remembered bodies flying past him as the artificial gravity failed. Then nothing but darkness until now. Forced himself to stand on shaking legs. His combat medic training kicked in automatically, and he checked himself for serious injuries. 2 cracked ribs, a deep cut on his forehead, severe dehydration and burns on his arms from the crash. Bad, but survivable. He had survived worse during the colony wars. The desert stretched in every direction without end. Massive dunes of rust-colored sand rose and fell like frozen waves on an ocean. There was no sign of the crashed transport, no sign of other survivors, no sign of anything alive. Knew where he was. The Empire used this moon as a dumping ground for prisoners they wanted to forget. No one escaped from, no one even tried. He started walking. There was nothing else to do. His water pack had been lost in the crash, and he guessed he had maybe 6 hours before dehydration killed him. The orange sun beat down without mercy, and his feet sank deep into the hot sand with every step. Each breath felt like swallowing fire. Hours passed. The sun began to sink toward the horizon and the temperature dropped rapidly. His lips were cracked and bleeding. His vision blurred at the edges. He knew he was dying, but he refused to stop moving. Humans were stubborn that way. It was perhaps their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. As darkness crept across the desert, spotted something in the distance. At first he thought it was a hallucination, but as he stumbled closer, he saw it was real. Ancient ruins jutted from the sand like broken teeth. Massive stone pillars carved with strange symbols stood in crooked rows. Walls of black rock formed a half-buried structure that might once have been a temple or a fortress. Did not care what it was shelter. He staggered toward the ruins as the last light faded from the sky. The temperature continued to drop, and frost began forming on the sand. This moon went from burning hot to freezing cold within minutes of sunset. Another way killed its prisoners. Reached the first pillar and leaned against it to catch his breath. The stone was cold against his burned skin. Strange symbols glowed faintly with pale blue light, and he wondered what kind of civilization had built this place. The architecture was older than anything he had seen before, older than the Empire, older perhaps than any living species. The sand behind him erupted. Threw himself sideways as a massive shape burst from beneath the dunes. It was a serpent, but calling it that felt like calling a mountain a rock. The creature was the size of a freight train, with scales like armored plates and a mouth full of teeth longer than its arm. Its eyes glowed with pale, hungry light as it searched for prey. Ran, there was no other option. He sprinted through the ruins as the serpent crashed through ancient stone behind him. Pillars collapsed, walls crumbled. The creature moved through the structures like they were made of paper. He spotted an opening in the ground ahead, a stairway leading down into darkness. Did not hesitate. He dove into the hole and tumbled down cracked stone steps as the serpent's jaws snapped shut where he had been standing a moment before. The creature was too large to follow. It roared with frustration, and the sound shook dust from the ceiling above his head. Then silence. The serpent had given up or was waiting for him to come back out. Either way, was trapped underground. He lay on the cold stone floor and focused on breathing. His ribs screamed with pain. His whole body felt like one massive bruise, but he was alive. That counted for something. Forced himself to sit up and look around. The stairway had led to a vast underground chamber. Blue light came from crystals embedded in the walls, casting strange shadows across carved stone. The architecture continued down here, but it was more intact, more deliberate. Someone had built this place to last forever. A voice spoke inside his mind, grabbed his head as words formed directly in his brain. It was the strangest sensation he had ever experienced. Not sound, but meaning, pushed directly into his thoughts. "You have entered my sanctuary. You belong to me now." He looked up and saw her. She stood in the center of the chamber like she had been waiting for him. Her skin was pale violet, almost purple in the crystal light. She had 4 arms, each ending in long, delicate fingers. Her face was humanoid but sharper, with high cheekbones and a narrow chin. Her eyes were the strangest part. They had no pupils, just swirling pools of liquid silver that seemed to reflect things that were not there. Had seen many alien species during his years of service. He had never seen anything like her. The woman tilted her head and studied him with those impossible eyes. She spoke into his mind again. "You are not any species I recognize. What are you?" Swallowed hard and found his voice. It came out as a dry croak. "Human, I am human." The woman went still. For a long moment she said nothing. Then she stepped closer and felt pressure building in his skull. She was trying to enter his mind more deeply, trying to read his thoughts and memories and take control. He pushed back instinctively. He did not know how. There was no technique or training. His mind was simply too chaotic, too full of conflicting thoughts and emotions, too human for her to grasp cleanly. The woman recoiled as if she had been burned. "Impossible," she said. "No mind resists me. No being refuses my influence." Managed a weak smile despite his pain. "Humans are difficult that way." The woman stared at him for a long time. Her silver eyes swirled with something that might have been anger or curiosity or both. Then she moved toward him and tried to crawl backward, but his strength had finally given out. Everything went dark as he collapsed on the cold stone floor. When awareness returned, he was not dead. The woman stood over him, looking down with an expression he could not read. "I am," she said, "last of the, and you, human, have become very interesting to me." Closed his eyes and wondered what he had fallen into. Woke in a chamber of smooth black stone. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing with the same pale blue light he had seen before. He was lying on a raised platform that might have been an altar or a bed. His wounds had been treated with some kind of paste that smelled like copper and lightning. Sat nearby on a throne carved from dark crystal. She watched him with those swirling silver eyes and could feel her presence at the edge of his mind. Not pushing inside, just observing, waiting. "You heal quickly for such a fragile species," she said without moving her lips. Sat up slowly. His ribs still ached, but the pain had faded to something manageable. The cut on his forehead had closed. Whatever medicine she had used, it worked far better than anything in his medic kit. "How long was I unconscious?" he asked. 2 cycles of the sun. Rose from her throne and walked toward him. Her 4 arms moved with graceful coordination, each pair seeming to have its own purpose. "You were very close to death. I considered letting you die. Dead things are easier to study than living ones." Tensed but kept his voice calm. "Why did you save me then?" Stopped a few feet away. "Because I could not read your mind. In 200 years of isolation, every creature I have encountered has been open to me like a book. I could take their thoughts, their memories, their will. They became my servants or my food, but you resist me without even trying. Your mind is like a storm I cannot calm. This has never happened before." Did not know how to respond to that. He changed the subject instead. "You said you were the last. I thought your species was extinct." His expression did not change, but something shifted in her silver eyes. "We were hunted to extinction by the Empire. They feared our abilities. They could not control what they could not understand, so they chose to destroy us instead. Fleets burned our worlds. Soldiers slaughtered our children. I survived only by hiding here on this forgotten moon." "For 200 years," said quietly. "For 200 years," confirmed. "Alone with the sand and the serpents and the fools the Empire dumps here to die. until you fell from the sky with your strange, resistant mind. She circled him slowly, studying him from every angle, felt like a specimen under examination. He supposed that was exactly what he was to her. "Tell me about humans," said. "Your species is young, barely 1,000 years in space. Yet you spread across the galaxy like a disease. You fight wars you cannot win. You colonize worlds that should kill you. You refuse to accept limits that every other species respects. Why?" Thought about the question seriously before answering. Because giving up is not in our nature. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, each other. We survived by being too stubborn to die. That stubbornness followed us into space. Considered this. Her four hands clasped together in a gesture that might have been contemplation. "Stubbornness is not strength," she said finally. "It is simply delayed death." Shrugged, maybe, but we have delayed it pretty well so far. Something that might have been amusement flickered across face. She returned to her throne and sat down with practiced elegance. "I have a proposition for you, human. This moon is my prison. The artifact that sustains me is buried deep beneath these ruins. I cannot leave without transferring its bond to another vessel. I have waited centuries for someone capable of helping me escape. You are the first being I cannot simply command to obey." Was immediately suspicious. What exactly would I have to do? "Survive," said simply. "Help me reach a ship capable of leaving this system. In return, I will keep you alive on this hostile world. I will heal your wounds and protect you from the creatures that hunt the sands. We will be allies until we escape together. And after we escape, we part ways. I have no interest in humanity or your petty galactic politics. I simply want to be free." Studied her carefully. She was not telling him everything. He could sense layers of truth and deception woven together in her words. But she was right about one thing. He could not survive alone. The desert would kill him, or the serpents would eat him, or the cold would freeze him. He needed her help whether he liked it or not. "Fine," he said, "we have a deal." Inclined her head slightly. "Wise choice. Though I should warn you that I considered enslaving your mind a dozen times while you slept. I may still try again when your defenses weaken." Stood up from the platform and walked toward her. He stopped just outside arm's reach and met her swirling silver eyes without flinching. "And I should warn you that I have killed things much bigger and scarier than you. I may be your only chance off this rock, so I suggest you keep those mind control attempts to a minimum." For a long moment they stared at each other, two predators measuring each other's strength, then laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes made of glass. "Perhaps humans are not as foolish as I thought," she said. "Come, I will show you how to survive on." Over the following days, an uneasy partnership developed between them, taught about the moon's dangers. The sand serpents hunted by vibration and could sense footsteps from miles away. The temperature swings could kill in minutes without proper shelter. Strange fungi grew in the deeper ruins that released toxic spores if disturbed. Taught about humans. He shared stories of Earth, of the colony wars, of his time as a combat medic pulling wounded soldiers from battlefields while plasma fire burned the air around him. She listened with fascination, asking questions about human biology and psychology and society. She was especially interested in human emotions. They experienced feelings differently, more controlled and deliberate. Human emotions seemed wild and unpredictable to her, like animals that could not be tamed. "Your species feels everything so intensely," she said one night as they sat by a fire had built from dried fungal stalks. "Anger and love and fear and joy, all mixed together in chaos. How do you function?" Poke the fire with a stick. We do not always function. Sometimes the emotions break us, but sometimes they make us stronger than we should be. A mother lifts a transport to save her child. A soldier throws himself on an explosive to save his friends. Emotion makes humans do impossible things. Considered this in silence. She had seen impossible things already. She had watched refuse to die when any other species would have surrendered to the desert. She was beginning to understand that humans were not simply stubborn. They were something else entirely, something that might change everything she thought she knew about survival. Felt them before heard them. She gasped and grabbed her head with all four hands, her silver eyes going wide with terror. She whispered, "A patrol ship has entered orbit. They are coming." Was on his feet instantly. How many? Closed her eyes and focused. Her psychic abilities could sense minds from great distances, though she could not control them without direct contact. 12 soldiers, one commander. They carry weapons designed to kill. They have detected the crashed transport's emergency signal. Cursed under his breath. The distress beacon. He had forgotten about the automatic systems that activated during a crash. The signal had been broadcasting their location to anyone listening. "Can we hide?" he asked. Shook her head. "They will search the ruins. They will find evidence of my presence. Artifacts, residual psychic energy, the servants I could not save when they died. The Empire knows what to look for. When they discover a survived, they will call for reinforcements, battleships, enough firepower to turn this moon to glass." She began gathering what few possessions she had. Her movements were frantic, desperate. "I must flee deeper into the underground passages. There are caves below that even I have not fully explored. Perhaps I can hide long enough for them to give up and leave." Grabbed her arm and stopped her. She could have broken his grip with her telekinetic powers, but she was too surprised to react. "Running will not work," he said firmly. "They will keep searching. They will keep coming back. Every patrol ship that visits this moon will look for signs of you. You will spend another 200 years hiding in darkness, always afraid, always alone." Stared at him. "Then what do you suggest?" Released her arm and walked to the chamber entrance. He looked up the stairs toward the surface, toward the ship that was descending through the atmosphere to hunt them. "We kill them," he said, "all of them. We take their ship and we leave this moon forever." Laughed bitterly. 12 soldiers, trained from birth to fight, armed with plasma rifles and neural disruptors and powered armor. You have a broken knife and bandages made from fungal cloth. How exactly do you propose to kill them? Turned back to face her, the human way. For the next several hours explained his plan, listened with growing disbelief. What he proposed was not a battle. It was systematic destruction using terrain, psychology, and patience. They began by leaving false trails in the sand, used her powers to create illusions, phantom footprints leading toward the serpent nesting grounds, set traps using materials scavenged from the ruins, tripwires made of crystalline fiber, pitfalls covered with thin layers of sand, rocks balanced to fall on anyone who triggered them. The ship landed as the sun reached its peak. Commander led his soldiers out onto the burning sand. He was massive even by standards, nearly 8 feet tall with blue-gray skin and muscles that seemed carved from stone. His eyes were black and cold as he surveyed the desert. "Spread out," he ordered. "Find the wreckage. Recover any survivors for interrogation." The soldiers obeyed without question. They moved in pairs across the dunes, scanning for life signs and following the false trails had created. The first 2 died in the serpent grounds. Illusions masked the vibrations of their footsteps until they were directly above a nest. The sand erupted beneath them and their screams were brief. Commander heard the commotion through his communicator. He tried to raise his soldiers but received only static. The serpents had damaged their equipment or eaten them too quickly for a transmission. "2 down," whispered from his hidden position among the ruins. Sent 4 more soldiers to investigate. They found only churned sand and blood. One soldier triggered a tripwire as he examined the scene. The crystalline fiber was invisible in the bright sunlight. A balanced pillar crashed down on him before he could react. His partner spun around, searching for threats, was behind him before he completed the turn. The broken knife was enough when you knew where to strike. The soldier fell without making a sound. Two more soldiers entered the ruins from the opposite direction. Was waiting. She could not control their minds, but she could overwhelm their senses with hallucinations. They saw monsters that were not there. They saw their deepest fears given form. They fired their weapons at shadows until their power cells ran dry. Finished them while they were reloading. Commander realized his patrol was being hunted. He gathered his remaining soldiers and retreated to the ship. They established a defensive perimeter and waited for their enemies to show themselves. Watched from a distance, they were disciplined. They covered every angle, moved with military precision, never exposed themselves unnecessarily. A direct assault would be suicide. But was not planning a direct assault. He waited for night to fall. As the temperature dropped and frost began forming on the sand, he moved. The cold made them sluggish despite their powered armor. Their sensors were designed for combat, not for tracking a single human crawling through ice and darkness. One by one, he picked off the soldiers on the perimeter. A knife across a throat seal, a push from behind into a waiting pitfall. A strangled cry cut short before it could become a warning. Commander finally understood what was happening. He abandoned the perimeter and charged into the ruins, searching for this ghost that had destroyed his entire patrol. He found waiting in the central chamber. "You growled, one human. One pathetic, primitive human killed my soldiers." Stood his ground. The knife in his hand looked ridiculous compared to the plasma rifle in its massive grip, but he did not run. "Your soldiers were not prepared for us," said. "The Empire has never fought humans before. You do not understand what we are." Laughed and raised his weapon. "You are nothing, weak flesh and soft bone. I will crush you with my bare hands." He dropped the rifle and charged. His speed was terrifying for someone so large. Tried to dodge but was too slow. A massive fist caught him in the chest and sent him flying across the chamber. He hit the wall hard enough to crack stone. Was on him before he could recover. Blow after blow rained down. Felt bones break. He tasted blood, his vision blurred and darkened. But he did not stop fighting. Every time thought he was finished, moved again. He grabbed, he scratched, he bit. He refused to surrender. He refused to die. Hesitated. In all his years of combat, he had never seen anything like this. Every species he had fought eventually submitted. They begged for mercy or simply stopped moving. This human was dying and still clawing at his face. That moment of hesitation was enough. Snipe found the seal between helmet and armor. The blade was dulled and chipped, but it still cut deep enough. Staggered backward, clutching his throat. Purple blood poured between his fingers. He fell to his knees, still staring at with those cold black eyes, still not understanding how this was possible. Collapsed beside him, barely conscious. Emerged from the shadows where she had been watching. She looked at the dying commander and then at the broken human who had defeated him. She had lived for centuries. She had seen empires rise and fall. She thought she understood all the species in the galaxy and their limitations. She was wrong about humans. Floated in darkness for a long time. Pain came and went in waves. Sometimes he heard voices speaking in languages he did not understand. Sometimes he felt hands touching his wounds, cool pressure spreading healing warmth through shattered bones. Sometimes he dreamed of Earth, of green fields and blue skies and the faces of people he would never see again. When he finally woke, was sitting beside him. Her silver eyes watched him with an expression he had never seen before. It took him a moment to recognize it as concern. "You nearly died," she said quietly. "Your internal organs were damaged. Your bones were broken in 17 places. Any other species would not have survived the first hour." Tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through his entire body, and he fell back onto the platform with a groan. How long, he managed to ask. 5 days. I used medicines I had been saving for centuries. Healing techniques my people developed before your species learned to make fire. You will recover, but it will take time. Closed his eyes. The ship, is it still operational? Yes, their communication systems were destroyed in the fight, so no distress signal was sent. But the Empire will notice when the patrol fails to report. They will send another force to investigate. We have perhaps 2 weeks before they arrive. 2 weeks to heal enough to fly that ship out of here. Was not sure he could do it, but he had to try. Was silent for a moment. Then she spoke again, her voice hesitant in a way he had never heard before. There is another problem. The artifact that sustains me is bonded to this place. If I leave without transferring that bond, I will die within days. My life force will simply fade away like a candle flame without oxygen. Opened his eyes. There is a way to transfer the bond. Yes, but it requires something that no being has ever been willing to give me. Complete trust. The ritual connects 2 minds at the deepest level. I must lower all my defenses, become completely vulnerable, and another being must accept part of my essence into themselves. The bond becomes shared between us permanently. Understood immediately why this was a problem. Species had been feared throughout the galaxy for their mind control abilities. No one would ever trust enough to merge consciousness with one. They would always be afraid of what she might do once inside their head. You want to perform this ritual with me, he said. Nodded slowly. You are the only being I have met who resists my influence naturally. Even if I wanted to control you during the ritual, I could not. Your mind is too chaotic, too human, and you have already proven that you will not abandon an ally in danger. Stared at the sailing. This was insane. He barely knew this woman. She had admitted to wanting to enslave him. She had threatened his life multiple times. She saw other beings as tools to be used and discarded. But he also understood her. 200 years alone, the last survivor of a genocide, hunted by an empire that wanted her species erased from history. Fear and isolation had shaped her into what she was. Under different circumstances, she might have been someone entirely different. Tell me what I need to do, he said. His eyes widened slightly. You agree, just like that, you do not want time to consider. Would time change anything? Asked. You need this ritual to survive. I need you alive to navigate that ship through space. We are stuck with each other whether we like it or not. Was silent for a long moment. Then she laughed softly, that strange wind chime sound he was beginning to recognize. Humans, she said, you make the most important decisions as casually as choosing what to eat for dinner. We have short lives, replied. We learn not to waste time on unnecessary deliberation. The ritual took place in a chamber deep below the ruins. Ancient crystals formed a circle in the floor, pulsing with the same pale blue light that illuminated the underground passages. Sat in the center, her 4 arms arranged in a complex pattern that seemed to channel energy through invisible pathways. Sat facing her. His body still ached from his injuries, but the pain seemed distant now. He was focused entirely on what was about to happen. When I begin, warned, you will experience everything I have experienced. 200 years of memories, emotions, pain. It may be overwhelming. If your mind cannot handle the flood of sensation, you could be damaged permanently. Met her silver eyes. Start whenever you are ready. Began to chant in a language older than human civilization. The crystals responded, their light intensifying until the entire chamber glowed like a small sun. Felt pressure building in his skull, familiar yet different from before. This time was not trying to control him. She was opening herself completely. The flood hit him like a tsunami. He saw as a child, playing with siblings in gardens of purple flowers beneath a turquoise sky. He felt her joy and innocence and the love of her family surrounding her like warmth. Then darkness came. Ships descended from the sky. Soldiers marched through burning cities. Her parents pushed her into a hidden passage and told her to run and never look back. He experienced her escape. Years of hiding, of running from world to world, of watching her people die one by one until she was the last. He felt her despair, her rage, her terrible loneliness. He understood how that loneliness had hardened into something cold and sharp, a survival instinct that saw other beings as threats or tools because trust had only ever led to pain. And through the connection experienced him. His childhood on Earth, rough but not without love. His decision to become a medic to heal rather than harm. The wars that showed him the worst of what sentient beings could do to each other. The friends he lost, the patients he could not save, the guilt that never fully faded. She felt his stubbornness, that core of iron that refused to bend no matter how hard the universe pushed. She understood that it came from the same place as his compassion. Humans loved fiercely and fought fiercely because they knew how brief and fragile life truly was. The ritual ended. The light faded. They sat in darkness, breathing heavily, still connected by something that had not existed before. Could feel at the edge of his consciousness. Not controlling, not invading, just present. He knew her emotions as clearly as his own. She was afraid and hopeful and confused and grateful all at once. "I did not expect that," said softly. "I thought I understood what humans were. I was wrong." Reached out and took one of her hands. She flinched at the contact but did not pull away. "For 200 years you survived alone," he said. "That is over now. Whatever happens next, you are not alone anymore." Silver eyes shimmered with something that might have been tears, though her species did not cry the way humans did. "Neither are you," she replied. They sat together in the darkness, two unlikely allies bound by something neither of them fully understood. The galaxy had tried to break them both. It had failed. And now they would face whatever came next together. The warships appeared in the sky like metal thunderclouds. 3 of them, each capable of reducing the entire moon to rubble. Their weapons charged and glowed with deadly energy as they took position in orbit. Stood at the entrance to the ruins and watched them descend. He could feel fear through their bond, sharp and cold in his chest. She had seen ships like these before. They had destroyed her world and murdered her people. "We cannot fight them," she said from beside him. "This is not like the patrol. These are warships with hundreds of soldiers and orbital weapons." Did not respond immediately. His mind was racing through possibilities, discarding plans as quickly as he formed them. The stolen patrol ship was fast but could not outrun 3 warships. Hiding would only delay the inevitable. Surrender meant death for both of them. Then he remembered something from the crashed transport, the prisoner manifest. He had glanced at it during the descent before everything went wrong. "The transport I was on," said slowly. "It carried stasis pods, prisoners being transferred to labor camps. The pods were designed to survive crashes. Some of them might still be intact." Understood immediately. "You want to find other survivors and convince them to fight the Empire." "I want to give them a choice. They are already condemned. Hiding on this moon just delays their execution. But if we can take one of those warships instead of our patrol ship, we might actually escape." It was a desperate plan, insane even by standards, but had learned something important during their ritual bonding. Humans did not make decisions based on probability of success. They made decisions based on what was right and trusted their stubbornness to handle the rest. The search took 3 precious days and crossed miles of desert, avoiding serpent nests and scout drones. The crashed transport had scattered debris across a vast area, and most of the stasis pods had been destroyed on impact. But 8 had survived. Opened the first pod and found a female inside. Her name was, and she had been an engineer before the Empire arrested her for sabotaging a weapons factory. She woke up confused and hostile until explained the situation. 2 more pods held warriors, a bonded pair who had been captured after a failed rebellion. 3 contained miners accused of stealing supplies to feed their families. 1 held an elderly philosopher who had been arrested for teaching banned texts about freedom and self-determination. The last contained a young pilot named Echo, who simply refused to explain why the Empire wanted him dead. Gathered them in the ruins and laid out the situation honestly. The Empire had sent warships. Fighting was almost certainly suicide, but running was impossible, and surrender meant slavery or execution. "I am not asking you to die for me," concluded. "I am asking if you want to die on your feet instead of your knees. The Empire took everything from each of us. This is our chance to take something back." Silence followed his words. The freed prisoners looked at each other, strangers bound only by their shared imprisonment. None of them had reason to trust a human they had just met. None of them had reason to believe this plan could work. Spoke first. "I spent 8 years building weapons for the Empire before they arrested me. I know their ships better than their own engineers. If we can get aboard one of those warships, I can disable their systems from inside." The warriors exchanged a glance and nodded. "We have fought them before. We know how they think, how they move. We can lead ground assaults." One by one, the others committed. The miners had explosives experience. The philosopher knew language and customs. Echo could fly anything with engines. Felt something shift in the room. These were not just survivors anymore. They were becoming something else. A unit, a crew, a family forged in desperation. Watched from the shadows, amazed. Her species had always worked alone, trusting no one, relying only on their own powers. She had never understood how other species could cooperate so quickly with strangers. Now she understood. Humans had a gift for connection. They could take broken individuals and make them whole through shared purpose. It was not magic or psychic power. It was something simpler and perhaps more powerful. They simply refused to let others face danger alone. The ground assault came at dawn, descended through the orange sky, carrying soldiers who expected to find one human and one hiding in old ruins. They found a fortress instead. Had spent days preparing defenses. Tunnels became. Open chambers became kill zones. The freed prisoners knew the tactics and used that knowledge to set perfect ambushes. The battle was brutal. Detonated charges that collapsed entire sections of tunnel onto advancing soldiers. The warriors held critical positions with fierce determination, their blades carving through armor like paper. The miners created diversions while Echo guided defenders through the maze of passages. Was everywhere at once, pulling wounded fighters to safety, directing counterattacks, refusing to give ground. He took injuries that should have killed him and kept fighting. The other prisoners saw this and found strength they did not know they had. Joined the battle directly for the first time in centuries. The bond with had changed her abilities in ways she did not fully understand. She could channel his determination through her powers, focusing her illusions and mental attacks with precision she had never achieved before. Soldiers saw horrors that drove them mad. Officers lost track of their units and wandered into traps. The assault broke. The surviving soldiers retreated to there and fled back to the warships in orbit. But knew this was not victory. The orbital weapons would fire soon, ending everything in cleansing fire. Now he said to Echo, "We need to move now." The patrol ship launched from behind the ruins where they had hidden it. Echo flew with skill that seemed almost supernatural, weaving between orbital strikes that turned sand to glass behind them. They approached the nearest warship from its blind spot, matching velocity perfectly. Had identified the docking bay with weakest security. They breached it with explosives and stormed inside before the crew could react. What followed was not a battle so much as a hurricane with legs. Led the assault personally, refusing to ask others to take risks he would not take himself. The warship's crew had never faced anything like the fury of prisoners with nothing left to lose. The warriors carved paths through resistance, sealed bulkheads and vented compartments, turning the ship against its own crew, walked through chaos like a ghost, breaking minds and creating fear wherever she appeared. In 30 minutes, the warship was theirs. Stood on the bridge as the captured vessel accelerated away from. The other two warships tried to pursue, but found their systems mysteriously malfunctioning. Had spent years learning Empire technology. She knew exactly how to sabotage it remotely. The stars stretched into lines as they jumped to hyperspace, watched through the viewport as the orange sun disappeared behind them. The prison moon that should have been his grave became nothing but a fading point of light. Stood beside him. Through their bond, he felt her wonder and her gratitude and something else that she had not felt in 200 years. Hope. "What do we do now?" she asked quietly. Looked around the bridge at the ragged group of freed prisoners. They had no home to return to. The Empire would hunt them all now. They were outlaws and fugitives with a stolen warship and nowhere to go. But they were alive, they were free, and they were together. "We stay together," said, "a crew of exiles and outcasts. The galaxy is vast and full of people who need help. We find them. We fight for them. We build something the Empire cannot destroy." Took his hand, and this time she did not flinch. They had believed that survival required isolation. That trust was weakness and connection was vulnerability. She had been wrong about everything. Humans had shown her a different truth. The universe was cold and hostile and full of dangers, but you did not face it alone. You found others who understood your pain. You carried each other through the darkness. You became stronger together than you could ever be apart. Cole had fallen to the sands as a prisoner and a stranger. He rose from those sands as something new, a leader, a symbol, a proof that humanity's greatest strength was not stubbornness or endurance, but the simple refusal to abandon anyone who needed help. The warship flew into the unknown, carrying a crew of survivors toward a future none of them could predict. But for the first time in a very long while, that future looked bright.